an introduction. Hi everyone. Today we're here with Kerry O'Bannon. She's a second year dental student. And before we start, if you have any questions, please put them in the YouTube live chat and we'll go over the questions after the presentation is over. Kerry, you may start whenever you're ready.
All right. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see and meet you all, even though it's over virtual. I was really excited when I was asked to do this because I love talking to younger people. I never had younger siblings, so I get excited when I get to talk to people younger than me and kind of like my advice and tips and tricks. So my name is Kerry O'Bannon. I'm a second year dental student at the University of Washington School of Dentistry, which is located in Seattle, Washington. And I was just talking to a bunch of the people who run this that I'm actually originally from the East Coast. I grew up in Washington, D.C., or right outside Washington, D.C. And then I went to undergraduate in Cleveland, Tennessee at a place called Lee University. It's a really small liberal arts school, but that's kind of my background in education. So fair warning, I have a dog. So if you hear him possibly bark, that is who that is. So hopefully he'll be quiet, but you never know. So kind of my dentistry timeline is I wanted to do dentistry since I was 3. I'm really odd. I've always thought it was the best profession in the entire world. I had a really great pediatric dentist and she let me work for her eventually as a pediatric dental assistant when I was in high school. That's the dog. 1 second. All right, he seems to be calmed down now. Oh man, that was perfect timing with the whole intro about the dog. But anywho, so I worked as a pediatric dental assistant in high school with my pediatric dentist. And when I went to college, I called around to some of the local community clinics that I shadowed when I was in college in Tennessee. And then I also was able to go to Honduras and Kenya through my school. They do a medical mission style trip. So we got to work with some of the local dentists and doctors down in that area, which was really fun. And then I also got to go to Kenya with one of my teachers who was a dentist. So she knew that I had some dental assisting training. So she's like, why don't you come along with me? And I'm like, why not? That sounds like a great idea. So all of that to say is when you see opportunities being introduced to you, always consider them very seriously because you never know how they can really affect and change your life. I plan to go out and work in my global community and my local community when I graduate. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then also after I finished college, I moved out to Seattle, Washington, and got my registered dental assisting license. And I worked in both private and community clinics. So how did I work in Seattle, Washington? I had a gap year. So I would just want to talk about gap years. Gap years are basically when you have time in between college and dental school where you can really kind of use that to your benefit. I had to apply 3 times to get into school because sometimes timing of dental school applications, timing and luck of who they're going to pick, it's not really straightforward. I came in each year with a really strong application, but it just didn't work out. But all of that to say is that doesn't mean you aren't smart enough or you're not capable or you're not well trained. It's just that's how it is. In fact, if I got in the first time I applied, I would have been a D4 right now, and I would have had a really large impact with COVID, and I wouldn't have gotten the same training. So I'm very happy to have gotten in when I did. So again, I graduated in May 2017. I took 2 gap years during that time. I moved, like I said, I worked in a private office, and then I also worked in a community clinic. Loved working in the community clinic. It was probably one of the most valuable training that I got during my gap year. And when I applied for the 3rd time, I got in. And I got into UW, which is the #3 dental school in the US, #4 in the world. And that's not to be oh, hey, look at me, I'm so smart. That's just, you are capable of getting into wherever you wish. Even if you have to apply again, you can still go to some of the best schools, even if you take a gap year. The only thing I would say is if you are going to be working during your gap year, take time off before dental school. Take a good like month off, do whatever you want to do, travel, uh, go see your family, just spend that time not working, just having fun. And then I started in July 2019. So the benefits of the gap year: if you can become a dental assistant, you don't have to go to dental assisting school to be a dental assistant. Most places will train you on the spot, on the job. Like I said, I got trained in high school as a pediatric dental assistant, which opened the door to me working in private office in a general dental clinic. And then that allowed me to gain more experience to eventually work in my community clinic where it's very fast paced. You're seeing lots of patients. Uh, the only caveat to that is if you do not want to go to dental assisting school, it is going to be harder finding a job that will train you on the spot, but they are out there. You just have to look and you have to ask, and you just have to be persistent with that. Also, the great things about being a DA, a dental assistant, before you go to dental school is you're getting so much clinical training. You're learning how to take impressions, rubber dams, talking with patients, meeting with patients, getting comfortable with that dynamic in the workflow of the dental environment because it can be very fast paced. Okay, now I want to talk about toxic work environments. When I first started in Seattle, I worked at a dental office for about 7 months, and it was extremely toxic. It was the worst experience I had while working, but I was in a kind of predicament. I wanted to stay long enough so that if a dental school applicant um, admissions team were looking at my application, they would say, "Oh, why did she just like show up for a month and then move?" Or, I didn't want it to look questionable, so I decided to stay. Um, there were a lot of bad things with my boss, bad things with the bad things with his ideas of patients, probably things that he should have gotten his license taken away. And all of that to say is if you find yourself in a toxic work environment and you can't leave, then try to use that time there to learn as much as you can. Some of the benefits of that was I got a lot of time to work on my skills. My doctor would always be like, "You're not doing something, work on your skills." Or he was very mean and rude to patients. So it taught me how to become a better advocate to my patients, stand up to him. Of course, that makes people not like you if you stand up to mean people, stand up to bullies, which is why I eventually left. Biggest critique is you're going to find yourself dealing with toxic people for the rest of your life. And there is a point where you can walk away, but if you do find yourself staying in that situation, try not to pay back evil for evil. That's the most important bit. Just because someone treats you with disrespect, it doesn't give you a right to maliciously attack that person in return. There's still a way to be professional about things and to air your concerns, but to not eventually set you up where it's going to bite you in the butt if you kind of go off on someone, because that person's still your boss technically. But also when to walk away. After 7 months, I found my new job at my community clinic, which I told you about, which was amazing. And I was like, all right, 2 weeks notice, see ya, never going to talk to you again, and you're good to go. So going into first year dental school, it's a really exciting time. You're going to have a lot of didactic classes. At UW, you take a lot of medical school classes like cardiopulmonary and renal anatomy. You're going to take endocrinology and microbiology, like all of those fun things. You get to take them with the medical students, and you get taught by specialist doctors in their field, which is really amazing and really cool. Sometimes it can get really complicated, but it's not too bad because at least at UW, they have teachers who specifically write your test questions in the way that you eventually get tested on in your dental board exams. And then also you get to have really fun labs. So you get to do things like wax teeth and do dental occlusion classes, which I'm sure you guys may have heard about before. I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of these photos before, but if you really like hand-eye coordination, or you like to paint your nails or decorate cakes, or like do fine detail stuff and do fine detail like artwork, things like that, you're going to really enjoy dental school. So second year, you get to make a lot new friends. This is my friend Pearl. I put a wig on her because why not? It makes things fun, and you get to have more patients, lots more friends. So this year you're doing still more didactic work, but you're also getting a lot more of your dental school classes. And I've kind of listed out the dental school classes that UW takes here. If you're curious at all, you can take a peek at that. Just so you kind of get an idea, because I was always really curious to be like, well, what do dental students actually study? Like, you hear, stories, but like, what are the classes? So I put them on the side if you're curious about that. So for example, some of the dental labs you have is things like an operative lab, which is drilling and filling, complete dentures, where you get to make dentures. So like putting little plastic teeth in place, securing them with wax, making them look beautiful. Doing a prosthodontist lab work, which is like making crowns and bridges and things like that. So it's really fun. You do a lot of lab work your second year. So it gives you a really good opportunity to watch shows, listen to podcasts, listen to audiobooks. I just finished listening to The Hobbit by Tolkien, and then now I'm on the second Lord of the Rings book. So for example, I've always wanted to read those books, but never found the time. Well, second year, you're always in lab. So boom, perfect timing. So it gives you a really good excuse to kind of have some fun. So this is just some of the lab work that I got to do for second year. You get to make a lot of mistakes with drilling. So for instance, this was supposed to be just like a little filling guy right there. I messed it up. Why not make it a smiley face? Things can be fun in dental school. And so this is kind of like a bridge that I was talking about, making dentures, doing partial dentures, crown preps. Like, this is just an entire list of some projects that we had. So you get a lot of time in lab work, and this is where you start feeling like you're a dentist, like you're getting trained to be a dentist, which is fun. Third year dental school at UW, that's mainly where you're going to do rotations. So at UW, they do these things called clerkship rotations, which is similar to how medical students will go into the hospitals and they'll observe different observe different medical specialties. Same thing goes for dental school at UW. So you get to go through all these different rotations. These are just some of the specialties that dental students will go through. Makes things really fun. You get to dip your toes into different specialties, and it gives you an idea of, do you want to specialize, after school? So fourth year, that's your full clinical year. You're basically a mini doctor, a mini dentist. You're seeing patients all day. You are taking care of them, and you get to have really interesting clinical rotations through. At UW, there's a special decode clinic, which I'll talk about, which is basically caring for people with special needs. And then also there's like geriatric clinics that we're allowed to go to. While you do take all these classes or these rotations, you're also going to be studying and taking your integrated national dental board exams. And then you'll have a competency exam at the end, again, just to make sure that you're competent enough to be a dentist, that your hand skills are good. And then just wanted to talk about some UW opportunities. So I go to UW. A lot of schools are very similar in some of the things that they offer students, but UW is really special because it is so well ranked and well known. So if you do want to go on to specialize, then you are setting yourself up very well to get into a residency program. Now, if you don't go to a top dental school, does that mean you can't specialize? Absolutely not. You can go to any dental school and you can specialize. But for me personally, when I got in, I looked at my choices and I was like, okay, UW is the best bet. And for me personally, I want to specialize in pediatric dentistry. So I knew about their pediatric dentistry program going in. So I decided this is the best fit for me. I want to go here. And again, that pediatric residency is an additional 2 years. When you do graduate dental school, you can become a dentist. You don't need to have further training like doctors. But if you do want to specialize in one of those subspecialties that I kind of talked about, you can go to an additional residency program. Some of them range from like 2 to 3 years. If you want to become an oral and maxillofacial surgeon, that's like 6 years of training. So it depends which specialty that you like. Another cool thing about UW is they have the RIDE program. So it's a regional initiatives in dental education. So basically, what that is there's a group of about 6 to 10 students that get selected from the dental school. They apply to the RIDE program, and they spend their first year in Spokane, Washington, which is a more rural area in Washington. And they do their didactic classes there. Then they come back to the Seattle campus, train with all of us our second year. And then for their service rotations, they will go back to Spokane and work in community clinics there, because a lot of the students that choose to do this program want to eventually work in rural communities, if not in Spokane, but just in general, after they graduate, they want to have that experience of practicing in a more secluded location to people who don't get regular access to dental care. So that's really, really cool that UW does. There's also lots of clubs at UW. There's clubs everywhere in dental school. For me personally, I'm involved in the pediatric interest group. I'm the vice president of that. So if you get me talking about peds, I can talk about it for hours, but I'll save that for another talk. There's also a lot of service opportunities at UW. You can have the option of enrolling in a class that's credit, no credit. It's not much commitment. It's called our health and homelessness class. And essentially, it's like podcast style lectures, about like 1 hour, and you have about 5 of them. But by taking that class, you get to go out and serve in the Seattle community, from things like our homeless population to women's shelters to refugee camps. So it gives you a really great idea to kind of ground yourself of why you are doing dentistry. Dentistry is about serving people. And I think the more opportunities you get to do that during school, it really allows you to focus on kind of the big picture of school. So regardless of the type of school you go to, I would just recommend getting involved in as much service as you can. Another really cool thing about UW is it's a really big research school. So it's a really cool opportunity. That's one of the reasons why UW is ranked so high. The good thing is if you do not like research, you are not required to do research. I know some schools require you to do research. Me personally, I've always hated research. I love presenting, I love talking to people, but the amount of work that goes into it in order to do something that I really enjoy, to me, didn't have a really big payoff. So I don't particularly like research, but there is an option for students to get involved in research programs that you get to participate in during the summers. And another thing is you don't have to participate in that specific program if you want to do research. I said I don't like research, but I ended up doing research anyways. I got to work at the Decode Clinic at UW, which is the dental education and the care of persons with disabilities. And it's a very unique clinic. There's not many like that in the United States. And essentially what it is it gives you really good specialty training to deal with any type of person with an intellectual disability or a developmental disability or things like that. And a lot of students will graduate from school not feeling very competent to handle these patients, but at UW you get really good training. So I worked with the director of that clinic, and I actually got to present at the special care dentistry national conference, and I essentially gave a case presentation. So that's just one of the photos from that. I thought it was really fun. I'm also going to do another research project with a different dentist about pediatrics and oral health. And all of that to say is I didn't enroll in a program in order to do that. I just kind of reached out and I was like, hey, what are you doing? Are you interested in doing any research? And teachers will always answer their emails. So it's really nice. So, big points. Dental school is really fun. I really love dental school. It was the best option for me. And I actually think it was at times easier than undergrad. I liked science in undergrad, but with dental school, I just thought it was so much more interesting. So I don't mind studying for really long hours and stuff like that. All of that to say is do not let dental school become the only thing in your life. It's important to be well rounded, and your patients are not going to be able to relate with you if you are just a bookworm. Like no one likes like talking to kind of like a know-it-all. I'm not sure about you guys, but like I like to talk about like movies and books and random hobbies, and so do your patients. Your patients are people. You should be a person too, you know. Just because you're a doctor and you have a fancy title doesn't mean you can't be relatable to other people. My mom is a mental health counselor, so she always told me how important mental health is. So dental school can be really stressful. You're going to be studying a lot, but just make sure you take care of yourself with your mental health and always find balance. So I have a generic kind of rule of thumb where I think it's really important for you to find a physical outlet, whether that would be like running, swimming. Like that picture is my sister and I. We competed in our first marathon and we were able to do that. And I did that during my first year of dental school. So you're like, what? You're able to run a marathon during dental school? Isn't it supposed to be hard? I'm like, yeah, we ran for like hours every single week. And I went on a red eye to the marathon, came with a red eye back. We did it in Las Vegas. Um, we stayed there for a little bit and I got back on the plane and I came back to Seattle and I took an exam and gave a presentation that same morning. So it was a really long day. But all that to say is you can still do really fun things in dental school that don't involve dental school. So please keep that in mind. Uh, so, like I said, finding a physical outlet, finding a creative outlet, do things like baking or drawing or painting or just like something that you enjoy that keeps you creative, that can still bring you life. And then also finding an educational outlet. Like, yes, you're going to be learning about teeth all day, but find something else that you find interesting that you enjoy. For me, it's very random. My dad really likes archaeology, and I ended up really liking Egyptology. I love studying about Egypt and pharaohs and all of that kind of information. Don't know why, couldn't tell you why, but I just find it extremely fascinating. So I find myself kind of looking into things like that. Or, if you like to like watch trash YouTube videos or TikToks, by golly, do what you like. Who says why not? You need time to kind of reset yourself. Um, so that's all I wanted to say about that. And another thing is when you're in school, you really need to find a community. You're not doing things on your own anymore. And that doesn't just go for dental school, but for high school, for college, and just life in general. You can't go at things alone. You need people, you need community, especially during COVID, which I know makes things difficult to kind of, establish that community, but it's really, really important. So there's a lot of different tiers of community that you guys know about. You have your school community, which is like classmates, dorm rooms, club friends, and that's great. But I would just say, don't just limit yourself to friends at school. If you move to college, you move away from home, keep in contact with your friends, with your old friends. Like there's not a reason for you to just be like, okay, bye, I'll never see you again unless it's like a reunion or something. Like, no, they were your friends through thick and thin. They're still going to be your friends. Also, your family, try to keep in contact with your family, especially the people who have supported you to kind of get you to where you are. My mom, she was like asking, she's like, can I come into this presentation? And I was like, Mom, like, you don't need to do that. They're doing a recording, I'll send it to you later. But like people are proud of you for getting, to whichever point you are in life, and they want to see that, they want to participate. So let them in on that journey. And then also, it's really important to find mentors. Like I said, not just in dental school, but just like in life in general. So find a teacher who can be your mentor. Find an older student who can be your mentor. If you're religious, find a pastor who can be your mentor. Just someone who can be kind of outside of you and your life and kind of give you advice if you're struggling with something. You need to have a person you can go to when things get hard and you need advice from, whether that's in school or just life in general. So all of this to say we were talking about dental school, but I just want to kind of go back to talking about dental office shadowing. So I know with COVID, you guys are really limited and you can't really shadow as much, but you'd be surprised if you continue to call your local offices around you. A lot of people are willing to still have students. Granted, you're probably going to have a lot more restrictions, like they may give you special N95 masks or maybe only coming in for certain procedures. But if you reach out, a lot of dentists are pretty accommodating and they like people who are interested in their field. So they will want to have you there. So just continue to reach out. I know it might be kind of annoying. You might contact like 6 or 8 offices who all tell you no, but there will be that one that will say, yes, of course, come in. We'd love to see you. Another thing is when you're shadowing is get to know everyone at the office, the front desk staff, the dental assistants, the hygienist, the support team, as well as the dentist you're shadowing. You're making an impression not just on that one person, you're making an impression on everyone there. And that's just a kind of a guideline, is just to be kind to everyone that you meet. And then always, if you can, bring treats if you're coming in the shadow. Like I said, I went to school in Tennessee and I had a Southern Nana. So she would always say, like, bring something wherever you go, show people that you're appreciative and thankful. You don't have to bake things. You can like bring chocolates. For instance, I needed to collect teeth for an endodontics class, so like root canals. So I needed to have teeth to practice on. So I called up some local oral surgeons and I was like, hey, can I have your teeth? And they're like, okay, sure. And I showed up with chocolates and they're like, oh, wow, thank you so much. Like, that little act of kindness really can go so far. Another thing is when you're observing, gauge the room, gauge the personalities. Your dentist may be a type that's really like happy go lucky, but if they're working, they're like super focused and they may not want to talk during the appointment. And then you're going to find other dentists who are like, oh my gosh, do you see what I'm seeing? What about this? What do you think? It depends on the type of person you're observing, of how interactive you can be. So just kind of get a feel of the room, see how much you can participate. Another thing, I've made this mistake so many times. If you're observing in a dental office and you're like doing not you doing an extraction, but if you're observing an extraction or observing a filling or dentures appointment and you cannot see something, please, by all means, move to a spot that you can see. Dentists can get so like wrapped up in their like line of vision that like they kind of block out the outside world, and unfortunately, they can forget about the people observing and they don't realize that, oh, hey, my dental high school student who came in to observe can't see anything. So you're literally just standing there and you're like, well, this is a great appointment. I can't see anything, but at least I'm here. No, no, no. Like I said, I've made that mistake before. And then the dentist is like, can you see anything? I'm like, no. And they're like, okay, well, move. I was like, okay, great. So, like I said, if you can't see something, please move. You're allowed to move. You're allowed to observe. That's what you're there for. Another thing is when you're in the appointment, don't just like watch, but try to engage as much as possible. Look at the instruments they're using. When the appointment is over, like ask, why did you use this instrument? Why did you use this material? Why did we have to do this, procedure with this patient? And that's going to stick with you so that when you do go to dental school, you're going to be so far ahead of the rest of the people in your class. And you're just going to know more about just dentistry in general because you ask those questions. Um, Another thing is while you're observing, see if there's ways where you can help. You may not be able to like work in sterilization or like schedule appointments, but you can like help clean rooms or do things. So just always ask, and then always thank everyone for letting you come in and in and observe not just the dentist, but again, the support staff. You're making an impression with everyone. So just always remember to be kind. Some dental school don'ts. Okay, don't feel bad if you don't get accepted your first time. Think of me, like I had to get in on my third time, but I still got in at a top dental school. It's still possible. Another thing is when you are in school in general, don't view your peers as competitors. This is really important. You can be a team player. You can be competitive, with yourself, wanting to do well. That's no problem. But don't compare yourselves to other people. Don't compare yourselves to their journey, and don't be mean about grades. Like if you got a A plus and your friend got a C, don't rub it in their face. Like these are common things, but just things that still need to be said, unfortunately, because they still need to happen. And then also, I should probably have placed this at the top. Don't be a jerk. It is a very easy thing that people definitely forget about, but be kind to other people. Don't be a jerk. Don't be what's called a gunner. Gunners are people who like only look out for themselves and sabotage other people. Don't do that. No one likes to be that person's friend. You're going to isolate yourself if you do that. Don't be a jerk. Simple as that. So next, on to some dental school do's. Also, I communicate through memes. That's why I put all these things there. So if you don't like memes, I apologize, but that's how my brain thinks about things. So dental school dues. So if you do take a gap year, take advantage of it, become a DA, or just like work in the dental environment, or if you do research, do that. Get involved as much as you can at school. This is the only time you get to do dental school and have some of these opportunities. So, get involved as much as you can. Again, have a life outside of school. Like I've said before, find a mentor, most important. Be kind to every single one you meet, classmates, teachers, support staff, just everyone in general. No one likes a mean person. Just remember to be kind. Uh, if you see one of your classmates struggling, help them. If you will really find yourself, if you help other people when they're struggling, then they're going to be able to help you if you have a weak spot. Fill in each other's strengths and weaknesses. It's going to be so much better if you do that to other people. And it just helps you understand that things are a team, it's a team effort. Also, change your mindset about school. In high school and college, we're so focused on grades. And I'm not saying that grades aren't important. I'm mainly trying to say is when you get into dental school, grades are important. If you want to specialize, grades are important. But when you're practicing, you're not practicing for a grade, you're practicing because you're going to work on a patient. You're going to do a procedure that's going to affect them for the rest of their life, whether that's good or bad. So practice as much as possible because you want to be a good dentist, because you want to have your skills benefit someone's life and not take away from that person's quality of life. And then also take pictures of your work. Take pictures with your friends, take pictures of your work so that you can see how far you've come. But also, a lot of us like to do Instagram. Don't just live on Instagram. That's also not good. But if you want to like post pictures so that your family can see what you're doing, by all means, take pictures. So I just wanted to kind of open it up for questions. I know that we're doing YouTube live, so I love questions. I enjoy talking at length, as you guys can probably tell. But if you don't ever feel comfortable asking questions online, feel free to DM me. I always try to answer people's DMs, and I will love to help you as much as possible as I can. And then also, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone with Dental School HS. I don't think you guys are aware of how good of a program this is that people put together. I went to college and high school with no one who wanted to do dentistry. So, and I didn't have any parents or, people in my family who were dentists. So I had no idea what I was doing to like get into school. So it's really great to have people who are doing these things and having guest speakers. So just take advantage as much as possible. But Thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you so much for presenting with us today. We do have some questions in the chat. So, our first question is, how do you find dental assisting jobs on the spot? And do you take online courses before dental assisting?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So, for finding dental assisting jobs, you can go through job sites. For example, I found my Seattle jobs through Indeed.com. You can find things through other kind of job portals like that. And you can put your experience of how experienced you are. Um, and it will kind of filter things through to find jobs, job listings like that. I can't remember some of the other ones that are out there. I think there's like a thing called Recruiter, Job Recruiter. I'll have to look it up. I may have to get back to you on that. But I used Indeed.com. They're very good. You might get like lots of emails to be like, hey, you found a new dental assisting job, popping up. As far as training, if you're just going straight into your job, you will have to look at your state's Department of Health, and they will say that you will need to take a certain bloodborne pathogens course, which is uh, uh, very inexpensive. I think it was maybe like $40 to $60 or something. And that gives you, your certification for like a year. It's like an online course. I think in Washington, it's like a 6 hour mandatory training. I was able to complete it in about an hour, didn't take 6 hours. And then I was able to, give my employer that certification. And they're like, okay, cool. And then you apply through the Department of Health to become a registered dental assistant. And that's again, like maybe like $100 or so. And then you can go in and get trained. And you just renew that every year, like on your birthday.
Okay, the next question is, what research would you recommend doing as a pre-dental student?
Yeah, another really good question. So, in college, you will probably have a lot of research opportunities just in general. I would say is if you can ever gear your research to talk about dentistry, that's always a very good idea. For example, in high school, I did a teeth whitening science fair project, and I took deer jawbones from Virginia because they have local houses that have those extra bits, and I scrubbed deer jawbones for 2 weeks with different whitening solutions to see which one worked better. It smelled really bad, but it was actually really fun and really interesting. Best thing to use, Clorox bleach. Would never recommend you using that in your mouth. That is absolutely disgusting. Um, but that was really fun. Also in college, I was able to do a physics research project, and it was basically pick a subject of whatever you want to talk about and explain the physics behind it. So I did mine on filling materials, like filling materials for teeth. And I talked about how physics affected going from the more liquid state of the material to a more solid state and using that energy to explain through that process, as well as some of like the organic chemistry behind some of those compounds. So your school may not be like, oh, here's a dental research project, but you can always kind of gear it back to dentistry, and then it always gives your application something to talk about.
The next question is, when you applied 3 times to dental school, what did you change?
Yeah, another really good question. Like I said, I love questions, so I will probably always say, oh, that's a good question. So when I first applied to dental school, my first time, I applied late in the cycle. So if you apply late, you are setting yourself up to not have a really good shot of getting in. So I would say try to apply as early as possible. I had a pretty good DAT score, but I wasn't like 100% happy with it. So I retook my DAT to kind of get some better scores than I did. Also, the second time I applied, I still applied a little bit later, and I was not considered a Washington State resident, and I wanted to go to Seattle, Washington school, and they are very big at taking people who are in-state residents. So when I applied my third time, I was an established uh, Washington State resident, so they give preference to me. And then also I had worked, 2,000 additional hours as a RDA. And then I have also applied as early as possible. And because of that, I was able to get in the earliest interview cycle. And that really set me up to get in. So all of that to say is apply early. If you're not happy with your scores, you can retake the DAT. That's no problem. And then also any additional hours that you can get observing, please do. Most schools require 100 hours of observation. Disregard that, do way more than 100 hours. Some people only do the bare minimum and it shows. And like I said, it only benefits you the more you shadow, the more you observe, the more work experience you have.
The next question is, what educational materials do you recommend to study for the DAT?
Yeah, so there are a lot of really good online courses. I personally use datbootcamp.com. I really liked that course because it gave me access to a lot of practice questions and it also had really good explanations. There's also Kaplan's online DAT boot camp, or just like Kaplan DAT studying. I didn't really like that one as much. I liked the layout of DAT boot camp a little bit better. I'm not sponsored by them. I'm just saying my experience. And they also had really good chemistry videos chemistry and math videos. In fact, I scored the highest on my general chemistry course, or my general chemistry section of the DAT. And I used to tutor people in GChem. So I would actually reference back to like DAT's boot camp of like explaining things to be like, oh my gosh, like if you need a really good explanation of X, here, let's watch this together. And they're just so well put together. So another thing is when you're studying for the DAT and you're in college, if you can take whatever classes you are taking, like if you're taking GChem, try to get DAT bootcamp and watch their GChem videos while you are in that class. It's going to be way easier to study that material while you're going through that class, and you'll probably get some better explanations than just waiting your junior or senior year to like study everything for the DAT. It's going to be way easier if you just kind of continuously open yourself to those questions.
Another question is, you stressed how important you felt a gap year is to one's development. How do you feel about accelerated BS/DMD programs, like accelerated programs, which do not allow for much personal time?
Yeah, so those programs are good. It really depends on your personality. I would say that there is a weakness to some of those or some of those uh, course tracks is because you don't go into school, go into dental school with any patient experience. Yes, you observe, but if you're working, you get a way different perspective. And for example, my lab work that I would have to do, I literally got paid to do things well. And a lot of my classmates would come to me and they're like, Kerry, how do I do this? Why do I do it this way? And I had that background to be like, okay, this is what you need to do. Also, depending on the personality, with some of those programs is you can't really get involved in anything outside of that program. And that can be a benefit, but that can also be a con as well, because you need to have balance and you need to experience things outside the world so you can be like a better relatable human being. So all in all, those programs are not bad. Depends on your personality, but if you can take a gap year or work during breaks, I would do that. Yeah.
Another question is, do you have a dream residency program that you want to go to? And if you do, what program is it?
Really good question. So I specifically moved to Seattle so I could get involved in their pediatric residency program. However, I've talked to that Decode clinic director, the person who works with special needs patients, And she gave me the idea of, you could maybe pursue two different residencies where you can specialize in working with geriatrics, older people, as well as special needs. And then you can do that's 1 year, and then go on to do an additional 2 year pediatric residency after that. So I've played around with the idea of possibly doing two specialties, but we'll see. Right now, I just want to do peds, but because I want to work overseas to some degree, I want to get as much training as possible so that I can like deal with any situation as it comes to me. So looking forward to the one in Seattle if I can get in there, but like dental school, no matter where you go, you're just happy that you got in. So also taking that into consideration.
Another question is, do you plan on owning your own practice in the future? What are your future plans?
Yeah, so I have worked in community clinics. I've worked in private offices. I do like working in community clinics, but they have their pros and cons, like private practice. I think eventually I'll be owning my own business, but I kind of don't like the business aspect of things, so I might have to get a really good business advisor or have a really good business partner because I like private practice because I want to choose who I want to see me. I want to choose my patients. So I want to work in low income areas with a high special needs population, with a high pediatric population. And I want to do private practice because it will give me the ability to take time off um, and not have to go through a process to be like, can I request time off with a community clinic? It's harder to get time off in community clinics. You're pretty much working all year round, but with private offices, you can take more time off. And like I said, I want to take time off so I can eventually go back to some of my global communities and serve there.
I think this is our last question. If you were to tell your past self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Really good question. Let me think about that. I think I would say that it's okay to slow down. I was always super involved in like a lot of things that when I got to my senior year of college, I was able to kind of like take a breather and take a step back and really enjoy that senior year. Uh, I was, I already took all my hard classes in college. So senior year was really easy for me. And I really just got to enjoy it. And I think that is something I would say is if I could have enjoyed all of undergrad that way, I think it would have been great. But I think I learned from that in dental school. I actually like dental school more than undergrad, like I said before. But I would just say enjoy the process, enjoy where you are, be grateful of where you are. And if you have opportunities, just continue to take those. And it's okay to say no to certain opportunities. You don't have to do everything. Um, yeah, that's what I would say.
I think that's it with the questions. Thank you so much for presenting with us today.